is Adina Siegel. I will be your presenter today for Caregiving and Summer Vacation. I'm just going to pull up my PowerPoint. And here we go. Okay. Welcome Caregiving and Summer Vacation. I hope you will find this a very helpful presentation. For our agenda today. Oh, I'm sorry, Rochelle.
And Adina, I was just going to give a little introduction for Karen, kind of some housekeeping before we start. Love the jump in, but just a little thing before we begin. I just wanted to thank you all for being here and give you a little information on CaringKind first, and talk about how we've been here for 45 years. We serve all boroughs, so if you're not familiar with us, we have seminars, monthly EDU similar to this one, our legal and financial aid, Medicaid home care, and then many program services such as Wander Safety, support groups, all evidence-based, evidence-informed, providing support for care partners, professionals, and individuals affected by dementia. And we have additionally our helpline where you can get more of this information. And I'll put that in the chat along with our website, where we have social engagement programs in the community, and where you can get more information on what we have. So just some housekeeping as well. Stay on mute. We would love it if you can put your video on if you're able to, but if not, we understand. And Adina, if you have questions, do you want it in the chat or wait till after the presentation?
Yeah, I would say either. I'm going to leave questions for afterwards.
Okay.
The presentation is not going to be that long. I think we actually get the most out of this presentation by hearing the questions and answers that come after.
Yeah.
Because everybody has different summer plans and different considerations, and I'm curious to hear about those. But I'm going to start out with the prepared presentation. So,
Perfect.
but feel free, if you have a burning question and you don't want to, lose your train of thought, you can put it in. I'll review it at the end.
Right. Thank you, Dina. So yeah, you can put the questions in the chat. We'll answer them at the end. And this meeting again is being recorded, so we will be putting it on YouTube. So if you leave early, come back to it, or want to share with others, you can find it there. And then after this, you'll get a survey as well. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Adina and take it away.
Hey, welcome everyone. My name is Adina Siegel. I am a social worker here at CaringKind, and I will be presenting today. And you will probably hear more about the work I do throughout this presentation. Our agenda for today, in terms of tonight, in terms of talking about summer vacation, we're going to talk a bit about the benefits of vacation for people with dementia, things that we want to consider before we make our plans, tips for traveling by plane and car, and actually I also added trains to this presentation, things to pack, how to have a pleasant stay. We're going to talk about wandering, other activities that we can do, different summer safety considerations, as well as taking care of yourself as a care partner at this time, which is always something important. I think it is probably one of the first things that tends to not be considered by caregivers. So we want to definitely make time and space for that. And then at the end, as I mentioned, there's going to be questions and answers. And so feel free to bring any and all questions or concerns that you might have that you might want to discuss. Also with the understanding that it will be recorded. So this will be all on our YouTube page for other people to take advantage of in terms of the knowledge. And also if you wanted to come back to it and see what was said, you are also more than welcome to do that. So there are benefits of vacation, obviously, for everybody, but there are specific benefits for vacation for people living with dementia. So it will enable the person with dementia and their care partner to engage in new experiences. A lot of times it's very easy to get stuck in the doldrums of caregiving, of doctor's appointments, of just overall just personal care, making sure that medication's done, and taken in a timely manner, and the basic self-care needs of a person are being done. What a vacation does is it really can enable you to take a little bit of a break from some of that. I mean, obviously not necessarily the medications, but at least of getting out of that dull routine and doing something new, something different, making new memories with that person, even if that person doesn't necessarily remember everything and won't remember the vacation per se, they will feel, the feelings will stay with them. And you will also have or potential for positive memories to have with that person at this time. So we don't want to discount that. We really want to, this is not my idea, but it's one that I've heard from a colleague and I really, really love it. The idea of creating islands in time is really important when it comes to caregiving for someone with dementia, where it's not just about the doldrums of care, but it's also about having those moments, those special moments where you can connect, where you can enjoy. We really want to try to create as many of those little moments as possible. So vacation really enables us to do that. If vacations were always part of that person's life, I mean, it's not unusual for people to take a summer vacation. It could be a time for the person to connect with, good memories, positive memories. Maybe there's a summer home that, you've always gone to. And so, the person can connect with old memories from that summer home. So it really can provide a very nice time for reminiscing. It can help, additionally, it can help the person living with dementia connect with other aspects of their identity. So instead of just being a patient or just being a person with dementia, maybe they're a person who likes to fish. And so, they get to go fishing, or they get to do other things that they've always enjoyed that now they can connect with as well. And we don't want to discount the benefits of spending time outdoors, really for anybody. Especially now with the sun being out so much, it's a mood booster. And being in nature is a mood booster. So, we do want to encourage that and engage with that. Now, these are all great and they stand as important positive things, but because the person has dementia, obviously there are things that you want to consider as a care partner. So you want to make sure that the person is okay with going away, that they will be comfortable. And even if they're not, that might be important information. How is that person as a traveler? How do they manage in new situations? Are there physical or mobility constraints that you have to navigate or figure out how to manage when a person's traveling? Are there any family members or friends who can provide assistance during the vacation? How long of a vacation can be tolerated by the person living with dementia? Some people with dementia have a very hard time with new things or with changes. Even without dementia, I certainly have clients who I work with who will talk about how the person with dementia might want to do stuff. They go out and they engage in an activity, and about 5 minutes later, the question is, when do we go home? So, you want to just try to gauge that person's tolerance for, going to new places and engaging in new things. You might have to be prepared to cut vacation short if necessary. So, thinking about taking on something like traveler's insurance or things like that. Also important to know what the medical facilities and pharmacies are in the area where you're going to be. If there is a medical emergency, what do you do? Having that prepared, or that information prepared, is very important. Okay, now the nitty-gritty of traveling, planes, trains, and automobiles. I don't know if people got the movie reference, but it's a good movie. So in terms of traveling by plane, so there are a bunch of things to consider. You obviously want to inform the airline that the person has dementia, any other special needs, if they need a wheelchair, if they need boarding time. I'll get to this in my second slide, which I think has more information regarding details around that. You want to request a wheelchair that's provided by the airport. The wheelchair people who I've spoken to will often say that the person who has dementia can get very overwhelmed by all of the hustle and bustle in an airport. I mean, frankly, I don't even know if you have to have dementia to be overwhelmed by the hustle and bustle in an airport, but certainly for somebody with dementia, it's even more difficult. So having a wheelchair, they can sort of just zone out. They don't have to navigate, and it's much more seamless to be able to get to and from where you need to go than having the person walk, even if they don't necessarily have a mobility impairment. It is still a wise idea to request a wheelchair and have them wheel the person through. It can also potentially help with TSA and checking in, with security. You want to plan ahead with strategies to reduce agitation, especially long flights or even not so long flights. What does the person like? Do they have particular music that they like that you can make a playlist? Can you make a YouTube playlist of videos that they like? Do they have other programs, on TV? You can bring a tablet. Do they maybe bringing food if as long as it's TSA compliant? But trying to think of things that the person can enjoy, the person can be occupied with, that they can be distracted while they're in the airplane during the flight is important to think about and to strategize and plan. You want to give yourself plenty of time to check in by going earlier. You might want to give yourself an additional hour or so to check in. You want to utilize family bathrooms to assist with toileting. This way the person can be assisted. And thinking about also making the flight more comfortable, noise canceling headphones might be useful on the flight. I've had a client who used that on the flight, who found it very helpful. So some important information to know about. So all airports are required to provide ADA compliant services. I know it's not always seamless, and it can, things can pick up and happen. So TSA Cares is the phone number to call, for any sort of issue that might arise. It's right here. It's 855-787-2227. You can call within 72 minutes of any flight for assistance. Through this is to help through the checkpoint, through the TSA checkpoints. So before you end up in the gate, on the gate, waiting for your particular flight, once you pass through the security, then you are under the auspices of that airline, and each airline has ADA compliance officer. So it's important to be in touch with whichever airline you're using to be able to get that service. Again, being able, even just asking for a wheelchair, I think really does help with streamlining some of that process. But I know people do have issues that might come up, and so this is a number that can be helpful. So last time I gave this workshop, actually, I was asked about trains, which I really did not have much of a clue about train resources and traveling by train, because I don't really travel very much by train or know too many people who travel by train. But I did some research. So when you make the reservation, you can actually request for special assistance regarding accommodations. So that's certainly something to do when you call, or if you're doing it online, to write in what it is that you need. Again, similar to the airplane, you want to arrive at the station an hour early. You want to notify the customer service representative of your needs, and you can also request a wheelchair. So that's also really helpful, useful. They can help you with steps. They can help you navigating with the bathroom, all sorts of things like that. So also a useful tip when it comes to train travel. And the numbers, here are some numbers for things should they go awry or should you need additional information. So the FTA transit assistance number, which I have down here. And I was just thinking of the typical train lines that we use, certainly in New York, Amtrak, and the MTA, which is responsible for the subway, Metro North, and Long Island Railroad. And so those are the numbers that you can call. And I will send out these slides so that this way you have all of this information, because I know it's a lot, and it's helpful information. So we will send these out. Traveling by car. Who hasn't seen this site? And I don't know why my slideshow is doing this, but you might, especially for long car rides, you want to schedule breaks. Make sure that certainly bathroom breaks are something that's probably going to be necessary, but even just breaks to stretch your legs or things like that are really important. And then even just considering timing, try to go when there's less traffic, where, you know, you won't have to deal with a lot of that frustration. And we're back to this similar to, the, you know, considerations on an airport. In an airline, you want to make sure that you have, you know, pleasurable activities that the person can do in the car that will, you know, make it easier for you, easier for them, that will distract. So it could be their favorite music, it could be an audio book, food, you know, anything that you know your person. I think it's kind of, it is important to gauge what are your person's favorite things, what are their favorite topics of conversation. Are there people who can be, you know, coming with them, who can, you know, provide them with some additional, can provide you with additional support and provide them with extra stimulation, so that this way it's not all on just the care partner to handle that. So packing is another major, or can be another major ordeal. I have clients where they will sort of, if the person's insisting on packing, like have them pack a bag, but then they'll make sure to pack the absolute essentials in their suitcase for that person. So, you know, just to make sure that they have stuff, because a person, just assume that the person with dementia is not going to be able to pack effectively. If you think about it, it takes a lot of planning and organization, and that those are aspects of the brain that are impacted by dementia. So, you know, it's not for any other reason other than that's how the disease manifests itself. But as a care partner, because we know this, so it's important to just keep in mind these particular things. Certainly for a plane, you want to make sure that you have a carry-on bag with essentials such as a change of clothing, incontinence supplies, and an extra day of medication. Planes get delayed, all sorts of crazy things happen, and you want to make sure that you have everything that you need. So you want to kind of bring a little bit more of what you need, and you want it to be kind of on hand as needed, as opposed to, say, in the suitcase. You know, so you want to make sure that you have that. You want to make sure that you have all the medical and legal documents. Make sure you have your insurance cards, medical records, medication lists, power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and passport and ID, obviously. You want to have copies of the itineraries to give family members or whoever you're staying with, so that they know where you will be. Actually, even if they're not going with you, it's good for family members to just know, have the general idea of where you are, what you're going to do, where you're going to be. And for the person with dementia, for their comfort, you might want to bring familiar items if they have favorite clothing, favorite blankets. I heard this really great tip around packing, where instead of having them pack, maybe let them pick out their favorite outfits, take a picture of the favorite outfit, and then pack it for them, so that this way they know what they have, and you make sure to pack it for them, and so they will have it. So those are some ideas about packing. And just some other tips around having a pleasant stay. You don't want to overschedule. I know, you know, especially when we're away and at certain locations or exotic locations, you want to see everything. That's going to be overwhelming for a person with dementia. So you want to kind of really keep it even keel, and on the more less frazzled scheduled side. You want to keep a regular routine for meals and bedtime. That's also something, you're on vacation, you're going away, it's easy to lose sight of all of that, but it is really important for a person with dementia to have a regular routine, regular bedtime. I mean, anything that can be predictable is something that we want to try to do for that person, because that helps them and helps keep them oriented. Just like with traveling, we want to allow extra time for activities. You know, realizing that you're not necessarily going to be able to do as much as you want to do, and give you more time to do, I guess, the less things that you're doing. In terms of thinking about hotel room or anywhere where you're going to be staying, thinking about night lights to assist with going to the bathroom. You know, I mean, you know, at night, certainly there's always a higher risk of falls. We want to make sure that it's well lit. You also want to try to think about labeling important areas like bathrooms and closets, because often, people with dementia, if they're in a new place, they're not going to be oriented to where things are. They're not going to necessarily intuit where the bathroom is, or what is a closet, or, any other room that that your person might have trouble figuring out. You might want to label it. You also might want to just keep if you can, like if you're in a hotel, if you can keep the bathroom light on, and then this way it's also pretty apparent where the bathroom is because the light is on over there. Also might be something to think about. Another interesting piece of insight that somebody gave me was they found it very helpful to have a hotel that has a kitchen or some sort of a cooking facility in it as well. We also want to keep in mind about wandering prevention. I mentioned orienting a couple of different times so far, and 2/3 of all people with dementia will wander at some point. There are plenty of things that can be done to try to prevent wandering, so we want to utilize all of those, certainly when we're home and definitely when we're on vacation. So Medic Alert actually has a bracelet that we actually have a program with them. It's called the Wanderer Safety Program. It provides you with a titanium bracelet. It is totally low tech. It's a titanium bracelet. Engraved on the bottom of the bracelet, it says the person's name. It says memory impaired or some other diagnostic issue that they have. It has a tracking number and it has the Medic Alert number. And this way, should they be wandering, if they are found by anybody who is an emergency personnel, fire department, police officer, it's paramedic, any of those people, they have direct access to that database. They will see the bracelet, they will go on their database, and they will be able to get that person united with their contact person very quickly. Even if it's not an emergency personnel, you will still be able to have somebody, if they find him or her, and they look at the bracelet, they can see the tracking number, they have the Medic Alert number, they can call Medic Alert and give them the tracking number, and Medic Alert will be able to alert the emergency contact person that the person has been found. There are also several apps that you can use on a phone to track a person. There's Find My Phone, there's Life 360. There are a billion of other ones that I don't even know about, but there's always some sort of thing that you can have on the person's phone, so that this way, if the person has the phone on them, you'll be able to see where they are. There are also just some GPS products, like a GPS watch. All of those things can be used, and we actually recommend a multi-pronged approach. It's not just one thing to prevent wandering, but several different things to help with preventing wandering is really pretty crucial. You want to make sure the person has some form of identification on them, and actually that's where Medic Alert really does come in, because the Medic Alert bracelet, because the Medic Alert bracelet is very hard to take off, and especially for someone with dementia, but even for somebody without dementia, it's not that easy. I've tried, and that is ideal because it's not even related to dementia, but anybody who goes out with no ID on them, they have that tracking information on their wrist, and it's very easy to have them identified. And we actually also offer the Medic Alert bracelet for caregivers for that reason, so that this way, if let's say there's a caregiver and for some reason they are unable to communicate, a person can fall in the snow, in the ice, and then hit their head and they're unconscious, God forbid, then somebody will see the bracelet and it'll say their person's a caregiver, and give out the information that is needed to help the person that they're caring for. So we want to make sure that there's some form of identification, either that the actual identification, or having some form of a bracelet with some form of identification is very important. You also want to make sure that the person has information about where they're staying. Let them have a copy of the address, or something to help them know where they're staying. And they can also always ask somebody, hey, I need help getting to this place, can you help me? So some thoughts for those people who cannot travel, don't want to travel. Staycation. is always something that is a possibility, and it also still can provide that opportunity for good times, happy times, new memories, enjoyable activities. So we don't want to discount staycations. There are programs, certainly online programs that are available that you can participate in. We have Connect to Culture, which is a program that connects with different cultural institutions in New York City and provides dementia-friendly programming. So it could be museums. We have some programs sometimes with dance groups or with music groups, things like that. So there's always something to do. On our website, we actually have a calendar of all of the events that are in the city, and you can directly register on that calendar. There are links for whichever program looks good and you'd be interested in. Many of them now are in person, but there are also virtual options, and some are hybrid where it's both. Don't underestimate visiting with friends and family. These are times, people are off, or people are thinking more about connecting with family in the summer. It may be worth taking some time to, connect with a family member, or spend an afternoon with, other, people in the person's life. And then also thinking about just day trips. And I mean, in New York, there's so many places that you can go. Even outside of New York, there are tons of places you can go that are within an hour or two of the city. So also those are things to consider based on your person's ability and interest, of what's available, what can happen, and what they want to do. Just some general safety tips for the summer as well. Obviously, I mean, some of this stuff is kind of pretty basic, but you're going outside, you want to make sure that sunscreen is used regularly, hats, things like that. You want to make sure, I mean, especially today was a crazy hot day. You want to make sure that there's a working air conditioner and that the person uses it in the heat. I know a lot of older people do not like using air conditioning, but certainly once it hits like 90 degrees, it's really important. Dehydration is another major concern that happens, and especially with dementia, people just don't usually like to drink. There are other ways of getting hydration in other than just drinking water. Using ice pops is an idea. There are some products out there now that are like gummies that are hydration gummies that you can get. So, there are different things that can be used, but we do want to make sure that the person is drinking regularly. Dehydration is not good, certainly not good for a person's cognition, overall health. It can contribute to UTIs. It can contribute to a lot of really bad things. So we do want to make sure that the person is cool and hydrated, and not overheated. Okay, and I think this is actually one of my last slides, and then we can go to questions. It's a pretty short presentation, as I said, so I'm curious to hear from everybody else. But I do think, and I want to really underscore the importance of taking some time for your own replenishment as a care partner or caregiver. Trying to enlist family or friends for assistance when possible is important. You want to, I mean, I know family can often be a dicey subject when it comes to caregiving, but if there's anybody who is able to take on, being with a person for an afternoon just to give you a break, take it. A lot of times people will say, if there's anything I can do, and whoever thinks on the fly, oh yeah, well, you can do this, that, or the other thing. I often tell my caregivers, like, try to make up a short list of things that will be helpful to, that the person can do for you. And this way, if a person says, if there's anything I can do, you have a couple of things that, well, you know what, I could use some help with shopping, or I can use some, if you could spend maybe an hour with the person so that I can go and, get a haircut or go to the doctor, or something like that. That's definitely helpful, and use it. I think most people do want to be helpful. So if you have somebody who wants to be helpful, let them be helpful. You also want to be realistic of what can be done, both in terms of the person with dementia's abilities and comfort level, and also with yourself. What are you able to do? What is just out of bounds for you, what is just too much. And being realistic about that is really important. I think a lot of times as caregivers, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that, it has to be perfect and we want to have things done in a certain way. And sometimes being able to just step back and say, you know what, I just can't be perfect and it has to be just good enough, is good enough. I think, on vacation, that certainly can come up, or those feelings can come up because, how often do you have a vacation? So it's just trying to let go of a lot of that is really important. Another idea, I got this from a client of mine in one of my support groups, is consider taking a mental health day for yourself if that's possible. Maybe having somebody stay with your person so you can go on a day trip, or go to the spa like this lady, or do something enjoyable for yourself. Is not a bad idea, and it's especially a mental health day. It's only one day. It's not like it's going to be a long-term kind of thing. It's certainly something to think about and consider. And lastly, I want to talk about respite. So there are a couple of different programs. What respite means is a short-term break from caregiving. There are programs throughout the city that provide respite, which is, just maybe a few hours, a couple of times a month, for, home care to be put in place so you can go out and do things that you want to do. There are respite stays that are available in nursing homes. I know, especially if somebody is getting MLTC Medicaid, then there often are respite options that are available and covered. And if they're not, there are other programs that are not covered, but a lot of assisted living facilities will all excuse me, will also provide respite stays, like short-term stays. So it's not like the person's going to be staying there forever, but maybe they will take somebody in for a month. And they can try out the assisted living, see if it's good. You can take a break while that person is there. And that's another option as well. So these are just some ideas of things to do for yourself. I think also just the idea of slowing down and of taking things as they come is also part of self-care for the care partner, that I can think of. And with that, I'm gonna go to questions and answers. As I said, this is not a very long presentation, but I am curious to hear from everybody else about things that might be coming up for you, and how we can best address them. I'm gonna, in the meantime, look at the chat.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Rochelle. Yeah, PLWD is person living with dementia. Let's see. Would the airlines not allow the person with dementia to board the plane by any chance? I mean, Daniel, I'd love to hear if there are any other concerns about that. My understanding is that they cannot just do it. Just because somebody has a dementia diagnosis, they can't say, no, you can't go on the plane. That would be against ADA regulations. And if you go online, you'll see all sorts of disclaimers around accessibility, and ADA compliance. So I don't believe that they can just say, oh, you have dementia, so you can't be on the plane. They have to provide what's called a reasonable accommodation. So, and ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's actually a federal law. So, if that does happen, that's why I gave you the TSA CARES number. I would recommend calling the TSA CARE number like as soon as you would have any sort of friction around that, because, or the airline, because they should not be just doing that. Where can we get more information about the titanium bracelet? How much? Rochelle, would you mind just putting the Wanderer Safety link up?
Yes.
Yeah, that's actually on our website. For the bracelet, we have, and as I mentioned, we also have it for caregivers as well as for the people who have dementia. And how much, I'm not sure the exact amount. I know it's like around 80, it's 80 something, for a yearly, it's a yearly price. So, and if there are problems or any sort of financial hardship, we do have scholarships available. So, yeah, that shouldn't be too hard. Let me just, I want to go in order. Sorry. I'll do that. Let's see. More information about respite in New York City. So that let me see what I can do on that one. That one, it would be through Department for the Aging. Um, off the top of my head, I would say call 311. I know there is another number, um, for that. I can see if I can pull that up, but, I would start with
Hmm.
there.
We also have a list of respite resources on our website, and
Oh,
it is some health centers, there's specific agencies, and we don't like suggest any of them, but they're just ones that we know of that are in the New York area.
yeah. Um, let me just see what else. Suggestions for caregiver going on vacation without the person with dementia. Any other suggestions about what can be put in place? I'm assuming, Mark B, you're talking about, in terms of keeping them home and making sure that they're safe. So I mean, and you can feel free to jump in if you want, but I would say, I mean, a lot of times what people will do when when they're going away, they will have, I mean, they might leave the person home with an aide, 24/7 or close to 24/7 as possible. Actually, I mean, depending on the person's functioning level, I've actually known people who they didn't necessarily even need an aide, but they would have like neighbors checking in, or other people checking in. But definitely you want to make sure that, somebody is watching over that person, that they're regularly eating and taking their medicines and doing the things that they need to be doing. Um, I'm just trying to think of other things that I might not have touched on. Um, I know some people, I mean, you don't even have to go on vacation for this. I know that there are plenty of other people who will put in like nanny cams in their person's apartment or home, and be watching them that way. I think that does take away from your vacation, because then you're like on your phone looking at the video footage the whole time. But that is another thing that I know some people do, or they'll do it as a precaution, not that they will be using that as their primary way of making sure the person's safe, but doing it sort of as a secondary kind of thing. I mean, I feel like no matter what, certainly with going away on vacation, having help is really essential. I mean, well, really with caregiving, it's essential in general, but certainly, with vacation, it's essential. So just trying to figure out like who can be supportive with this, who can, um, you know, keep an eye out on the person. Can the person stay? Can a family member stay with that person while you're going away to relieve you? Or even if it's not for 24/7, maybe they can come in for dinner or for breakfast or something like that. But I think having additional eyes and ears on the person is really important. Um, I hope that answers it. If there's any other sort of sharpening question that you can ask, if I didn't catch something or I didn't touch on a concern, just let me know. What can I do to help the person with dementia deal with the time difference when we travel? Ooh, that's a good question. Okay. Well, I definitely think certainly making sure that there's a clock that's prominent, is helpful. I mean, I think in general, people with dementia have trouble, with time, with orientation to time. But you do want to make sure that there is a prominent clock around so that you see it. I would probably, I mean, similar to what you would do with anybody with jet lag, is trying to get them on the same schedule as the place where you're going to be is kind of important. So like, trying to discourage napping, until are on basically the same time schedule. Trying to encourage them to sleep when it's dark and, stay up when it's light. I think is kind of important, and then just pointing out the time. I would also say don't schedule any strenuous activities, certainly in the beginning, so that this way the person can acclimate themselves, like maybe give them a couple of days where they can just get into the groove of things. I don't know, Rochelle, if you have any other ideas.
I think the visuals, like showing what time, and when I think of like the time, like getting accustomed to time, I think of that's when like maybe sundowning can come into play. So making sure like to prevent that. But not really sure how. But again, um,
I would say keeping things very low key, at least certainly in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
is really important. I mean, even when, I was talking about, having time spent with family and friends. I mean, we talk about this a lot with our holiday stress workshops and stuff, but, keeping in mind that things can get overstimulating for the person. So you may want to make sure that they have places for downtime, for quiet. They can leave if they want to. Not having too many people around all at one time, I think is also really important. Just and really that's kind of just even just general good practice. So keeping that in mind. Let me see if there about others, and let me know if you have any follow-up questions on that or any other concerns. So we should ignore the local time but function with Eastern time. I would not. I mean, well, depending on how long you're going to be staying, I would not. I would not function with Eastern time. I would try to get them on the time of wherever you're going to be, as much as possible. And with the realization that it's probably not going to happen overnight. I would use, visual prompts like a clock, pointing out to, daylight outside, and try to keep that person on the schedule of, the wherever you're going to be as much as possible, with also not overscheduling or overstimulating them all that much, at least in the beginning. Okay. What to do with sundowning on vacation? So I think sundowning in general is a pretty common concern. Firstly, I think you want to just to clarify, like, where are you going to be? Are you in a home? Are you in a hotel room? How much space do you have? How much wiggle room do you have? Are you going to be with a lot of people or not? I think when it comes to sundowning, you do want to have quiet as much as possible. You don't want to have a lot of stimulation. You want to try to encourage more kind of restful activities. And also you want to try to redirect and distract as much as possible. So I mean, I'll give an example. I mean, this was probably one of my, I mean, I don't want to say easy, but it was a nice solution. When I had a client who was sundowning, and I was talking to their caregiver, and the caregiver was talking about this person was a real movie buff, and it happens to be their favorite movie was The Wizard of Oz. So I'm like, oh, sundowning time is a perfect time to turn on The Wizard of Oz, and that was what they did, and it was actually very helpful because it gave that person a distraction. It was not particularly overstimulating, and that was perfect downtime, perfect downtime activity. Other people, if the person needs a distraction, I know some other techniques people have used is, have grandchildren call them at the time of sundowning as a nice distraction. And those are just general. I know on vacation it may not be as easy, but I think the rule of thumb is to really try to keep things light and low key as much as possible. Keep them comfortable. Am I missing Rochelle, if you have any other things to add, feel free.
No, I think you hit it. And I'm just thinking of like the methods of like what things do they like to do when they're not sundowning, and can you apply those in those moments of stress, but just like always having like a plan A and a plan B with what your vacation, what you want it to look like.
Which is pretty much, I mean, I think that's like the one glaring overarching theme here is, planning ahead, really trying to think of your person's favorite things, the things that bring them joy, that distract them, that can keep them occupied. When it comes to, I mean, one thing I like, I mean, this is not necessarily a vacation thing, but there's a book, it's called The Best Friends Approach to Dementia Care. And the idea being that, the best dementia care is really taking into account the personhood of that person. Who were they? They're not just somebody who's, 85 years old with dementia. This was a person who might have been a librarian or a storekeeper or an electrician or something. They were doing stuff, their entire, even a homemaker even. They were doing stuff in their working younger lives, and that doesn't go away from a person just because they get old. It's still part of that person. So you want to try to engage them in activities that are aligned or linked with who they are, or who they experience themselves to be. So you do kind of want to think about what makes them tick, what do they like. This also not necessarily on vacation, but if somebody was working in an office all the time, they may want to just rummage through papers. And I have clients where they have a desk, they have an office, and they just rummage through papers all day because that's what they have been doing, and that's who they identify as. So you want to just really try to think about who the person was, what made them tick, where might they be mentally in their mind right now, which might, fuel their engagement, in the current day to day. In fact, let's see if we can find this.
On a
Yeah.
side note, something that I was thinking about with the trains and even subways, if you're traveling locally and or on the trains at, I know, like Penn Station and places around in New York locally, there's something called the Red Cap service. And the Red Caps are people who help with accessibility and are there to help if you need extra assistance getting to places. So that's something to know when
Where
traveling.
where do you find them?
Red, so they're stationed around so like I know like with Amtrak, their assistants at your service and Red Cap service, they're kind of just like members on this team who are there to like help with any like questions you have extra, like if you need a wheelchair, if you need extra time or something, that they're there to help. And I'll put the link in.
Okay. No, that's very helpful. But this is Amtrak. It's not MTA.
Right. This is Amtrak, but I think I think it's just Amtrak.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, I don't know if I don't know if anybody's going to London, but I know in Heathrow they have something called the Daisy Project, and where they have people who are wearing daisies on their lapels or whatever, and they're people who are there to help people who need accessibility
Hmm.
items or things or assistance, and they help people through the airport. They're
Yeah.
volunteers. It's pretty amazing. So okay, here I found what I wanted to find. This is actually something that we use in one of in our caregiver support programs, in our caregiver coaching program. And it's in our notebook. And what I love about it is it helps really jog the memory and think about things that you never thought before. So thinking, we all have general information about the person with Alzheimer's and dementia that you want to have on hand, their medications and, phone numbers, addresses, whatever. But this information is stuff that is important. I think it's important for that best friend kind of care. And we don't really think about it all the time. And having something like this on hand is actually very helpful. Just thinking about where they're from, who their family is, their family of origin, where they've lived, what are their accomplishments, occupations, favorite job. I mean, I can read through this, but what I really like about this is it's making you think about the person in a different way. What has made them tick their whole life, and thinking about that and thinking about how we can try to incorporate that currently. What I love about this one, I found it, I mean, I never really thought about this. You don't really think about this stuff in terms of dementia care, but I wouldn't really think about, tobacco use. Well, I would actually, but even just, coffee or tea, how do they like it served? How often do they drink it? What do they like to eat when they're ill? What preference for bathing time of day? I think we all kind of have that preference. We don't really think about that. We don't think about, how how people feel about temperature changes and what their footwear preference is and how often they go to the barber shop or the beauty parlor. So like just these types of things are things to think about when it comes to, that type of person directed care. The notebook, I don't know if the notebook can, I can try to get the this list, and we can maybe send it with the PowerPoint. Because I think, yeah, it is a great list. I happen to love it. I love using it with people. So I'm going to see what we can do about sending that out. Because it's definitely very helpful, and it could be potentially very helpful with thinking about ways to occupy the person during sundowning. So
And Karen also made a great point that Red Caps will also board you onto a train before it is announced to the public, which helps with the extra time, which I feel like also at the airports, like there's usually like the different groups that you can go on the plane, but there's also the people who need extra assistance and making sure if that's something you think you'll need, getting that. And so I think you can access that through the accessibility areas of each transportation that you're taking. So making sure to check with that to see what you can get with that. Depending on which mode of transportation or airport or place you're going, where you can get that extra support.
And I'll also just plug in, since we're here. I mean, we have our helpline. We are here, certainly during working hours, and even if you need additional assistance afterwards. I think, Rochelle, you put the helpline in already.
Yes.
Even on vacation, if you need some support, you need to talk to somebody, how do I handle this? Really, call our helpline. I'll put it in. And somebody will be available to, give you some guidance. So that this way, you're not alone and high and dry, on vacation. Wondering if there are any other considerations that did we cover everything? Is there anything I haven't covered when it comes to summer vacation that we can address? Or if not,
Yes. If there's anything else, let us know, or feel free to call the helpline. So a dementia specialist will be there to answer any further questions. But if that is it, we do have our next monthly EDU happening on July 22nd, and that will be maximizing balance and function fall prevention strategies that work. And it's with Tom Atwood, who is a physical therapist and works with brain health, rehab, fall prevention, which is very important when working with dementia care. And so put the link in there also in case you want to sign up for that, which it will be July 22nd. And thank you so much, Adina, for this presentation. And
thank you.
Vacation's important for everyone. I think just getting that's a respite in itself, and we were talking about that. And so making it the most easy and able.
Yes, definitely. So I hope everybody enjoys your vacation. It should go without a hitch, and it should be really enjoyable and
all right.
And replenishing.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.